We are sponsored by Skip Benton with Coldwell Banker Select Real Estate in Northern Nevada. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive with us.
God, yeah.
You know, today we're tackling new home construction,
Oh, yeah.
specifically how people feel about it in their own neighborhoods. I think you and I both know this is a hot topic,
Yeah.
and we've got some fascinating research
For sure.
from Fannie Mae's National Housing Survey to really kind of dig into.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's interesting, right? Because everybody seems to agree we need more housing,
Right.
but nobody wants it built in their backyard.
The old NIMBY.
Yeah, exactly.
Not in my backyard.
Not in my backyard. So this deep dive, we're going to look at some of the things that Fannie Mae found.
Mhm.
And there's some really surprising findings about how people feel about new construction
Yeah.
based on if they're renters versus homeowners.
Sure.
And also how consumer perceptions don't always line up with economic theory.
Yeah, you would think like supply and demand,
Yeah,
but
right. There's
there's a little more to it than that.
Yeah. So let's jump into it. First of all, I think we should acknowledge that it's a tough housing market out there right now. I mean,
It's tough.
the survey found that 69% of people
Wow.
said it's difficult to find housing they can afford.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big number.
It is.
And that number has jumped significantly since 2017 when they last did this survey.
Yeah, and there are a lot of factors feeding into that. You've got high home prices,
Yeah.
rising mortgage rates. All those things are kind of creating this perfect storm of unaffordability.
Right. And so we're seeing this reflected in the survey and in the 69% of people who are struggling. But one of the things I thought was really interesting in this survey is the difference in attitudes between renters and homeowners.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
The survey found that renters are way more likely to support new construction,
Okay.
specifically affordable housing in their neighborhoods.
Interesting.
73% of renters were all for it, compared to only 44% of homeowners.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
That is a huge difference. And you know what? It just reminds me of all those local government meetings that I've sat in on where they're talking about new developments.
Oh, yeah.
And, and people are getting up there.
Right.
You could just feel this tension
Sure.
between the renters and homeowners. Like they're speaking two totally different languages.
Absolutely. And it's not just about that affordable housing label either. Renters, they're generally more open to those denser housing options like townhomes, apartments, while homeowners, they tend to favor the single-family detached homes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, homeowners might be worried about property values or, changes to the character of their neighborhood. But what I think is really, really interesting is the disconnect between what economists say should happen and what people actually believe.
Right. Yeah.
So, basic economics would tell you that if you build more houses, prices should come down.
Supply and demand.
Right.
Right.
But the survey found that only 13% of people
Wow.
believe that building more homes will actually lower prices.
That's wild.
In fact, the majority.
Wow.
59% believe that prices will actually go up.
Yeah. So it's almost like they're thinking
Yeah.
that more equals more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird inverse.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. I think there are a couple reasons for that.
Okay.
One could be they just assume any new construction is going to be,
Luxury.
luxury, high end.
Yeah.
That's going to stew the prices up.
Right?
Or maybe they're worried about more people moving in, driving up the demand for, other goods and services.
Uh-huh.
And then you get this ripple effect of inflation.
So almost like adding more people
Exactly.
to the equation is going to make it more expensive for everybody.
Everything more expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Is that how it works?
Oh.
No. Is that? It's definitely more complicated than just a simple cause and effect.
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And the survey data,
Yeah.
it shows that a lot of folks are worried about things like property taxes and rent increases.
Sure.
61% think local taxes would go up,
Wow.
and 59% believe rent prices would rise if you build more homes.
So it's almost like they're thinking, okay, well, even if it theoretically brings down housing prices,
Yeah.
On paper,
Right.
in reality, all these other things are going to go up and it's going to end up costing me more.
Exactly. It all kind of balances out in the end.
Right. So it's like they're trying to weigh all these different factors
Mm-hmm.
and it just kind of comes out to more equals more expensive.
Yeah. And this is a classic example, I think, of how our perceptions, sometimes they just completely overshadow economic theory. And it really highlights the challenge for policymakers and developers who are trying to increase that housing supply.
Right, because they're trying to solve a problem. But
it's a solution.
People are pushing back.
They're met with resistance.
Yeah, it's like not just about bricks and mortar.
Right.
It's about like navigating this whole web of like...
It's a complex issue.
Perceptions and expectations.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a real catch-22, isn't it?
Right.
They're trying to, solve this problem, but the solutions are just making people more anxious.
Right. And it seems like a lot of this comes down to like a mismatch between what people want in a home and what's actually out there available.
Right. And the survey actually touched on this too.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting for builders and developers.
Okay.
The survey found that 31% of people would consider buying something other than a traditional single-family detached home.
Interesting.
So, townhomes, condos, even things like co-living spaces or, those accessory dwelling units.
Yeah.
There's a growing group of people that are open to these different housing models, especially if it means, affordability.
Right. So there is a demand for those more diverse housing options, but the supply is just not there.
Yeah, and that makes sense when you consider that only 18% of the existing housing stock falls into that other category.
So we're really stuck in this single-family home paradigm.
Very much so.
Even though a lot of people are looking for something else.
Exactly, and this is where things get tricky. On the one hand, you've got folks, really wanting more affordable options.
Right.
But then on the other hand, there's a lot of resistance to the kind of development that would actually, make that happen.
Right. It's like that fear of change.
Yeah. People get attached to their neighborhoods, their communities.
Right.
And the idea of, denser housing or more affordable options, it feels like a threat to what they know, to that familiar landscape. It's understandable. Change can be unsettling, especially when we're talking about, something as personal as your home and your community.
Right.
But here's the thing. Even if people are hesitant about, development right in their backyard, there's a pretty broad recognition that we do need more housing overall.
Okay.
The survey found that a majority of people believe that more housing is good for the country as a whole.
Interesting.
Even if they're not so keen on it, happening right next door.
So there's like a glimmer of hope there.
There is.
That people recognize that we need solutions, even if those solutions are a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that's a key takeaway. We need to move beyond that not in my backyard mentality and start thinking about how we create communities that are affordable and desirable.
Right.
It's not about forcing unwanted development on anyone. It's about finding ways to, increase that supply and also address the concerns of, the people that already live there.
So how do we do that?
It's a tall order, right? Well, I think education's a good place to start.
Okay.
We need to help people understand the housing market better.
Yeah.
The factors that drive affordability and the benefits of different types of development, When people are informed, they're more likely to have better conversations.
Right.
And consider, different options.
Right. So it's about changing the conversation.
Exactly.
From just like no to, okay, well, how can we make this work?
Exactly. And that takes open communication.
Yeah.
A willingness to compromise and that recognition that,
we're all in this together.
We're all in this together.
Yeah. And it's not just an abstract economic issue, right? It's people's lives.
It is.
It's people's dreams. It's their ability to
absolutely,
thrive in their communities.
Yeah. I think you've hit the nail on the head.
And we need to find a way to balance those individual needs with, the larger goal of affordability.
Right. And I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
I think we can do it.
Okay.
It won't be easy, but there's a growing awareness. Right.
Of the challenges. And I think that's a good first step.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good place to maybe wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
On new home construction and affordability. But I want to leave you with a question.
Okay. I like a good question.
What if you were in charge
of
housing policy in your community?
Okay.
What approach would you take?
Wow.
How would you balance, all those competing interests and perspectives and those goals?
That's a great question to leave our listeners with.
Right.
It really gets to the heart of the matter.
It does.
No easy answers.
Right.
But, the more we talk about these things, the closer we get to finding some solutions.
Yeah. And I think that brings us to the end of today's episode.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, and we want to thank Skip Benton with Coldwell Banker Select Real Estate in Northern Nevada for making this episode possible.
Yeah, thanks, Skip.
Until next time.